Hi, everyone. I see some folks are still joining. We'll give everyone just about another minute or two. We're just on the hour just to make sure everyone is getting settled in before we join. So thanks for joining. And we'll give you another minute or two to make sure all of our participants have joined. All right, I think I see some people still joining, but we'll go ahead and kick the session off. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. Thank you for everyone who's joined us today. Welcome to ADOC's February webinar. My name is Marley Ravid, and I'm from ADOC. I'll be your host for today's session, where we'll be exploring healthcare in the age of AI, how Memorial Healthcare is bridging the gap between theory and practice. I am thrilled to be joined by our three experts today. We have Jeff Sturman, Dr. Benjamin Friedman, and Elad Balach. We're going to explore several topics in today's webinar. I think you will find it both an interesting discussion and also informative. And I want to first introduce our speakers, talk briefly about how we'll be handling today's webinar, and then we'll hand it off to Jeff, who will be kicking us off. But first, let me introduce Jeff Sturman. He is Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Memorial Healthcare System in South Broward Hospital District. Previously, he was a partner with Cumberland Consulting Group and National Healthcare IT Consultancy. He is experienced in planning, management, and facilitation of large system implementation projects, digital transformation, organizational change, operational impacts, and overall governance. He is an accomplished, results-driven executive with demonstrated success leading healthcare information technology initiatives. We are also joined by Dr. Benjamin Friedman. Dr. Friedman is a veteran physician leader who since 2011 has served as Chief of Radiology for the Memorial Healthcare System, a public, nonprofit, nationally recognized hospital system, and as a leader of Radiology Associates of Hollywood, a 69-physician subspecialized in vision physician services practice and the exclusive provider of imaging and radiation oncology services to MHS for 7 decades. His distinguished career is marked by clinical expertise in diagnostic imaging and numerous leadership roles throughout his affiliated organizations. We're delighted to have both of you joining us. Thank you, Dr. Friedman and Jeff. And we have Elad Balach. He is the co-founder and CEO of ADOC. He is an expert in AI with visionary business insights in the healthcare space. Since establishing ADOC into early 2016, he's led the company through 4 investment rounds, bringing the total investment to $250 million, drove the commercial availability of over 20 product lines, created an install base of more than 1,000 global hospitals while growing the company to more than 400 employees. I think we can all agree that we are in good hands with our speakers today and their dynamic backgrounds. Just a little bit of housekeeping and agenda. This session is being recorded, and the recording will be sent out to all registrants after the session is over. So if you need to drop off or if you'd like to share this with a colleague in the next few days, look out for the recording in your inbox. And today we'll approach our session with Jeff kicking us off. He'll share some deeper information on how Memorial Healthcare has approached AI and their experience in integrating it in their health system. We'll then hand it off to Dr. Friedman, who will share with us his experience on the clinical impact of artificial intelligence. Elad will then walk us through some insights from scaling AI and sharing some learnings and reflections. And we'll have Dr. Friedman jump in at the end, just a little bit about looking forward and some predictions for where we're going with AI. And after the presenters share, we'll open up to some dialogue. I do want to encourage anyone who has any questions throughout the session to write your questions in the Q&A, and we will open that up at the end for discussion and to answer any questions that you may have. So I'll be taking them throughout this. I'll be making note of the questions throughout the session. So if you have something that pops up in the middle of this discussion, please ask in the Q&A. And with that, without further ado, I'd like to hand this over to Jeff.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Like you said, Marley, wherever everyone is, I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully, as the CIO of a healthcare system, I can actually do that effectively. And hopefully you are all seeing my screen now. So let me get to a view that actually might be a little better for everyone. Or not. So let me tell you a little bit about Memorial. Memorial is, you're probably seeing two things here, aren't you?
Yes.
There we go. So Memorial Healthcare System, I'll cover that real quickly for you all, and then talk a little bit about AI and how we see that here, and get my dear friends Alad and Dr. Friedman to give you a lot more content, and I'll go quickly here. So Memorial Healthcare System is a public safety net healthcare system sandwiched in Southeast Florida between the north of Palm Beach to the south of Dade, and we are in Broward County. We're actually the South Broward Hospital District formerly, and we are a wonderful public organization that I think the biggest compliment I've ever heard given to us is we're a public hospital that operates like we're private, and hopefully that means we're fairly efficient. We have a terrific balance sheet and long tenured of executive team and physicians that are just, I think, world class, and certainly a wonderful place to work and live. So we're 6 hospitals. We were established in 1953. I will go to the next slide here. It's a little bit dated. We're actually 17,000 caregivers. In the last couple of years, in really the last 18 months, we've been on a hiring spree. So we don't have that nursing shortage that we once had. And we're really very thankful that we have the clinical excellence to deliver care really to our community. So 3,000 physicians, we have over 2,000 volunteers. We are a quaternary level healthcare system, again, spanning from the east of the southeast of Florida all the way up to the Everglades, which is a very specific geography. Our charter really allows us to deliver care and build hospitals in the South Broward District. So Broward County is really divided between the north and the south. North is Broward Health, which has the same public safety net status as Memorial Healthcare System. But we are really very proud of the excellence we've achieved. A lot of accolades, which I won't go into, but we are delivering more than 63% of all babies in Broward County, for example. We have the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital, which is a terrific brand, and very proud to be part of this organization. So jumping into AI and really getting into the discussion today, this won't come as a surprise to anybody. We all know the market size and the opportunity that presents itself from an AI standpoint. The total market size was valued at $7.9 billion in 2021. And you can see the exponential growth that we're expecting to achieve over $201 billion, by 2030. So just huge growth opportunity. And we all know that we are at its infancy still. And I've been saying this for a couple of years now, but we're still at our infancy from where AI can take us, from reducing costs to improve clinical outcomes, to increasing efficiency and productivity. There's great examples here. I'm sure you'll all get the slides later, or we'll make sure you do. but I think this is just sets the stage for so much of the discussion that Dr. Friedman and Elad will go through. So how do we think about this at Memorial and where we see AI? So we're really, again, we need to think differently in healthcare. We need to think that a hospital-based healthcare system like Memorial, which is, again, terrific and amazing, is evolving to a next level of health and wellness, moving from the hospital to more at-home care. We need to simplify the consumer experience and the provider experience. So really, if we can look at how AI and technology and digital means can make the experience for our providers a little bit easier, that hopefully translates to making the life of the consumer. And as we put the consumer in the middle of all the journeys that we have in health and wellness, just a little bit easier, then I know that's my mission, that I know that we've at least tried and started to influence the health delivery world. So there's so many other great lessons learned that I think we can borrow from other industries relative to technology, relative to artificial intelligence. And I don't think that we should be shy about borrowing those ideas from other industries. And we've been really putting that as a thesis at Memorial. And then again, we talked about this a little bit. We're very results driven. We're more data driven today at Memorial than we ever have been. And I'm so proud that we're actually using the data that has become the secret sauce to really understanding the health and wellness of our populations at a next level. For so long, our industry has implemented technologies, whether they be imaging and PACS solutions that Dr. Friedman can talk about ad nauseum, or electronic health records or ERPs. We didn't do that for the last 20 or some years to implement technology. We did it so that we could get the data and create efficiencies and learn from the data so that we can treat patients in a better and healthier and safer way. And then finally, I would just end with this before passing the baton a little bit. We have to view AI like we view technology, and so many places still struggle with this, as really a strategic lever. So how can we leverage AI? Don't make this an IT initiative. Don't make this about digital. Make this about improving access to care, delivering care in the right setting, being predictive, lowering our length of stay, increasing revenue, and all these bullet points that you see up in front of you. And I think if we do that, we're going to keep in mind how we can really leverage AI at the next level. So with that, I will be quiet for a few minutes, although Dr. Friedman and Elad know that's not easy. And I will pass this on to Dr. Friedman, and I will stop sharing. So Dr. Friedman, you can start sharing.
Okay, sharing now. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. And I just want to start by introducing myself briefly. Ben Friedman, I was educated in New York. I essentially spent 14 years in New York between college, med school, and then my training program at Columbia. Began practicing at Radiology Associates of Hollywood in 2001. And it's the same practice that I'm still at. I became the chief of radiology for the Memorial Healthcare System in 2011. And at the same time, the chief of radiology at Radiology Associates. I've had a number of additional roles at the healthcare system, and you can see that among them is not expert in AI. I don't claim to be an expert in AI, but I do have a fair amount of experience running a practice, running a medical practice, running a radiology group, and operating a department in the healthcare system. And so using common sense, I've been able to apply AI principles to our department, and I'll talk about those coming up. It's just a little radiology family photo, and this is the real thing. You're going to see my transition slides have a theme of waves. Why waves? Because AI is experiencing a wave of popularity across the world right now. And that's very much true in healthcare as well. And you'll see the waves increase as we move on in the slide deck. I want to start with why AI and why now for Memorial. So why? So first of all, there is a global shortage in radiologists across the country. There are a global shortage of physicians generally, but radiologists in particular. And the impact of that is that there is a lot of work to do and not a lot of people to do it. One thing I wanted to share is a slide from the ACR. This is a screenshot about 6 months ago of the American College of Radiology job site, and it shows that there are 1,701 available jobs across the country in radiology. And this was the same slide yesterday, 1,667 available jobs. So there's roughly 1,200 residency spots and roughly 800 fellowship spots. What this is showing you is if every fellow came out of training, got a job, it would mean 2 years. For 2 years, no radiologist would be able to retire in order for those fellows to fill all of the open positions. So tremendous shortage of radiologists out there. In addition, there's been a sharp increase in imaging volumes across the country for a variety of reasons. The patient population is aging, patients are entering the healthcare system through the emergency department, a variety of different reasons, but we're experiencing increased volumes across the board. In addition, the acuity index of that volume is increasing. What does that mean? Well, it means that the patients that are coming in are getting an increasing number of higher acuity exams. So rather than getting X-rays, they're getting MRIs, they're getting CAT scans, and these are more complicated to read, and it contributes to the difficulty. In addition, there's a rising case complexity. The patients are older, typically sicker, have complex conditions and comorbidities, and again, contributes to the challenge. Escalating urgency of presentation. Patients are coming in now, not through the outpatient imaging arena, but frequently through the emergency department. And that requires a more expedited interpretation. And so there's higher demand on the radiologists to reduce their turnaround times. And finally, radiologists' risk of multitasking. And this is a result of a tremendous number of different things that the radiologist has to do over the course of the day. And that includes interacting with technologists, reviewing and assigning protocols, reviewing stroke patients that require immediate interpretation. You might be in the middle of one study and have to interrupt that study because there's a more acute study that needs to be interpreted quickly. Trauma cases where you might have 8 or 10 CTs all coming in at the same time. All of these things are happening to the radiology workspace, and radiologists have to deal with them all while providing accurate, subspecialized, comprehensive, high-quality reports. All of this contributes to an essential need for improved efficiency, of course, without any cost to accuracy or quality. So why AI and why now? So let's talk about the when and the how. So the when and the how is always and in every way possible. Memorial Radiology has always been a leading edge adopter. In the healthcare system, we believe in adopting technology that's already been proven, but early in its adoption phase. But we don't really believe in adopting bleeding edge technology that has not yet been proven. We have included AI as the latest in a very long list of technological catalysts that we have already used to improve efficiency and preserve quality and service. So some examples, all of these are listed, and all of them are customized to our need at the Memorial Healthcare System and Radiology Associates of Hollywood. Many of them are homegrown. We developed them internally, and others are third-party applications. So multi-button mice with hyperscroll functionality, that's the most primitive. We need those buttons in order to replace keyboard shortcuts to allow the radiologist to get through their stack and every single exam with the fewest number of clicks possible in the most efficient way possible. This is a long laundry list, which I'm not going to go through, but I will tell you imaging analysis AI and ADOC is just the most recent and the most sophisticated tool that we have implemented in a very long list. This goes to show you that we have tried absolutely everything to improve our efficiency. This doesn't work so well, but we've tried it. This is the average radiologist workstation. This is what it looks like, and there are a variety of different applications open on this workstation that shows all of these functions at the same time. But you can see every single piece of every inch of real estate is being used on the screen for different applications that make us more efficient. How did we implement AI? So first of all, communication and collaboration are key. The tools to start something new starts before the new thing gets there, and that's with a lot of conversation with the practice, with the healthcare system, with partners, other colleagues that we're collaborating with. It has to be user-friendly. If it's not helping the user, it's not going to be used. It has to add value. In radiology, we measure our efficiency with the number of clicks that it takes to get through a study and move to the next study. It seems silly. A click takes a second, but those seconds add up. When you're reading 200 cases a day, it adds time by the end of the day. We need to ensure that the IT that we're using is efficient and reliable. We need to gradually ramp up. I'll give you a for instance. When we first adopted ADOC, we started with 3 of their algorithms. We could have started with all of their algorithms because we bought that package, but we thought, let's start with 3, let's see how it goes, and let's move up. And currently we're at 10 and soon to be 12. Train and empower super users. So one individual cannot be responsible for training everybody in the practice. We need grassroots adoption and people at the front line training each other on how to use the tool. I'm going to move on to surprising lessons learned. And I'm going to list a few here. First of all, early user reluctance often evolves into enthusiastic adoption with consistent and persuasive promotion and support. And we've seen this a number of times. People like the status quo. They don't want to change. They don't want a new application. But then you show them how it's helping them. And in a second, they are the most eager adopter and the one who's talking the most positively about the application. Next, AI is not there yet. This may not be that big a surprise. Our practice, as I said, and our system have always prided itself on being leading edge, but not bleeding edge. By the time we choose to incorporate an application, it has been well vetted. But while AI has evolved tremendously, the tools are by no means perfect, and there's so much growth to come. This is at once exciting and humbling. Next, customization is critical to success. As I said before, it's not enough to introduce an application. In order for successful adoption, it needs to work within the framework of the user's everyday experience and address the specific needs of the client. No, AI will not be replacing clinicians in the near term. So much hype about this, but it's mostly, in my opinion, paranoia from those who have not really used AI. AI is going to make us better. It's going to make us faster. It's going to make us more efficient. But for the foreseeable future, human intelligence will remain necessary in the healthcare space. And finally, the team is key. And this, perhaps, the lesson is not so surprising. But in my opinion, far more important than the capabilities of the application is the relationship with the team developing the AI and introducing it, whether it be built in-house or a third-party vendor. There is an I in AI, but of course, there's no I in team. We need the techs, and we need the colleagues on the clinical side. And of course, we need the vendor, people who are interested in not just the success of their own application, but ultimately in putting the patient first, having the vision and creativity to grow and adapt as the technology advances. I'm grateful and honored to be part of such a team at Memorial and Radiology Associates of Hollywood, including internal talent and outstanding vendors with whom we partner, like Elad and ADOC. And quickly, just some clinical impact. These are the various things that AI has already accomplished for us at Memorial: improved efficiency of the radiologists and the technologists, enhanced our reporting accuracy, increased our diagnostic confidence. That's a very difficult thing to measure, but when a radiologist feels more confident, even by a 10% margin, when they click the final complete button on their dictation, it helps them be more efficient. Reduce the time to clinical communication, and continuously evolve best practice. This is how ADOC specifically has done at Memorial by the numbers. So 2023 monthly averages, about 4% you can see a positivity compared to the total number of studies analyzed. I'm very proud of the fact that the user engagement is at 98%, which means that our users are interacting with the algorithm very actively. And I'll end with this. a graph of the adoption of ADOC as we have gone across 2023 from January to December. You can see significant increase in the total volume of cases that have been analyzed as we've increased more of our algorithms in play. Finally, I want to mention the wow moments. Wow moments are essentially those times when the user, the radiologist, was so impressed with the algorithm and the findings that it made that the user actually took the time to make mention of the tool and gave that feedback back to ADOC. So with that, I'll hand it over to Elad, and I will come back when he's done to talk a little bit about how I see the future.
Well, this was, first of all, Ben, thank you for sharing. I think this is very insightful, even for us, to see how it is being adopted. And I do want to say I totally agree with you. The concept of the team. I think how you've led the department and your team around you in the adoption of checking the data, being very thoughtful about training and engagement. It's funny, and I'll start the presentation in a second, but there is a new role becoming in health systems, the Chief AI Officer. And I've had one of them reach out from one of our partners recently to ask me one of my lessons learned about how a health system could prepare for AI. And I think he was angling more towards data infrastructure, right? And how do we prepare the data? But my answer to him, look, it's not about the data infrastructure. The way to prepare for AI, it's really is about the people and the governance and the internal strategy. What making health systems move faster or slower is, yeah, obviously the data infrastructure is important. I don't want to minimize that. But what really makes health system move is the people and process component that you have leadership internally that can lead the decision making and a change management process that I've seen can make all the difference in successful AI implementations. I don't know if that tracks with your thinking process as well. And with that, I want to share a few more reflections from really scaling AI. I would say we're most probably today the most widely used clinical AI solution in the US. And growing to that, I think we had a lot of lessons learned, a lot of mistakes, I will say. And I am very proud that our partners have been helping us along the way to really keep going. I think we're barely at the beginning of the journey for AI, and it really is about continuous and mutual innovation. But the one thing I want to clarify as we talk about AI, there are very different AI spaces. And I think a lot of the conversation we had today is on the clinical side, which I would define as making a specific impact on a specific patient, right? It's HIPAA identified in a specific PHI identified in a specific case. And there are other great spaces that I think we see AI can make a big impact, communication, staff augmentation, financial, operational. But obviously, where we play in one of the areas I'm obviously most excited about is in the clinical side. And really, this is kind of a very simplistic way, those that haven't seen clinical AI, how to think about it. Effectively, clinical AI think about it as a layer that hovers on top of the existing system of records, identify the clinical insight or clinical signal, and then triggers an action or a care pathway based on it. And I think Ben gave us really great example of how it integrates into the radiology workflow, where the clinical insight in that instance is the potential suspicion or existence of an acute finding. There is increasing amount of evidence around the impact of AI. Ben shared some of it, and actually it can be quite significant as we look at the US. And there are studies from Cedars and Yale about length of stay. There are studies about revenue generation. So obviously physician efficiency. There is a lot to it. But still, obviously, I think that we're still seeing that we're in the early stages of adoption. I would say we're probably at about the 20% of health systems at this point. And the flip side, if you look at the vendor side, it is truly exploding. these numbers are actually probably not fully updated. There are 700 FDA-cleared AI solutions, 530 as written here in radiology. Every day there are a few more, so I'm sure there are even more. And the scary part is that this is actually very distributed, where the average vendor has 2, maybe 3 solutions. So if a health system wants to say I'm going all in on AI, the real problem is that we don't really have scalable consumption models for AI. Like, how the hell does a health system, Ben or Jeff, how can they interact with 500, 200 vendors, right? I mean, it's just not, it's not a reality. And I think what we've learned is that developing a scalable approach is immensely difficult. And I will share in some of the naivete we had when we started the company. My background, I was an AI engineer. So that's what we knew. That's what we started with. And originally, we really thought that building an AI company is going to be around AI. Like, we expected the platform to be a very naive, simple thing that basically routes the right data to the right AI, something very simple. And the algorithm is going to take the bulk of the work of the journey. And I will say, now that we've been through the journey, scaled it, have the most FDA clearances for AI solutions, I don't want to minimize the difficulty of developing great algorithms, but really the key components are the everything else, or how do we develop a strategy? How do we develop a platform that is actually scalable, that it can actually make a difference and allow us to scale? And I do want to share one example. We don't need to go through all of the reasoning, but one counterintuitive thing that we've learned of why you need a platform. So this is an interesting kind of data point. When originally we thought, so our first algorithms were really in the radiology space, as Ben mentioned, and let's say we had a great brain bleed algorithm that can detect brain bleed. So I need to run this algorithm on a head CT exam. And despite this sounding like a very simple problem, and those that are in obviously healthcare systems know that it's more complex, just knowing that a specific piece of data is a head CT and sending that to the brain bleed AI is actually incredibly difficult. And the data infrastructure today isn't really accustomed to that. And therefore, like, you really don't know, it's not coded correctly in the metadata that a head CT is a head CT. So the way they do it today, you either rely on human labor, you rely on the technician, or you rely on some sort of mapping of a protocol. And this is an example of just showing it's not just that the data is unstructured, it also keeps evolving and changing. Even if we just look at the left graph, this is how many protocols our system have seen over 3 years. Protocol is, in imaging, is a name of a series of study exam. And we see, or look at the number of studies, and we saw that over time, we started seeing more and more study types, basically names of exams that they do. And we grew from like 50 in year 1 to over 400 different names of protocols in the same facility. So basically, it's not just that the data isn't structured, it's a moving target that is very difficult to chase. And this is an example of how the study descriptions changed in one health system. The clinicians of you will probably understand how this could happen. And the problem is that if the data is wrong, garbage in, garbage out, if the data is wrong, you're not even analyzing the right patients. And this is a true, real example from a real health system that has ADOC for C-spine. This is example. In the span of 4 months, because they changed their protocols and added scanners, after a few months, we started analyzing only 50% of the exams in that institution. Obviously, we caught it with the platform, corrected it, but if we didn't have the platform component and we just relied on the manual mapping, we would not analyze half of the relevant patients. So the algorithm accuracy wouldn't even matter. You could have the best algorithm in the world, it wouldn't do that. And I was just wanted to give this as just one example of the complexity that is healthcare and running AI in the real world, things that you don't thinking about that can really ruin your day and ruin the physician experience. If I think Ben can attest, if randomly we wouldn't run on 20-30% of the exams just because it's a new protocol or something changed because of data drift, obviously that's not a consistent experience that can increase confidence, increase efficiency, or anything like that. That is no one of us would use a product that is that inconsistent. And therefore we believe it's necessary, putting even ADOC aside, it's really necessary to invest in building this platform end to end, investing in the data normalization, investing in the monitoring, investing in the different workflows. And it's way more complex than what we originally thought it takes to develop an AI platform. The last point I really want to share about kind of lessons learned is really our evolution to understanding that a strategy is needed. And when I say strategy, I mean that I really believe that organizations these days, because AI is becoming more and more mature, should look at AI from more strategic, enterprise-wide perspective than, again, a point solution siloed approach. We have more and more point solutions, but the problem is that, look, even on the ADOC platform alone today, there are, let's say, 30 or so AI-driven care pathways. If you implement one every 6 months, in 3 years, you're going to have 6. Right. And Ben just mentioned they grew within less than a year from 2 to 10 and now 12. I think the only way to grow with AI is to develop really a holistic enterprise-wide strategic approach, to really take control and not allow for this, death by 1,000 cuts. So when we work with health systems, really, we really recommend creating a governance process of AI, right? And it doesn't have to be complex or onerous. It can actually streamline and accelerate. It doesn't have to slow down. And those are kind of the 4 steps to think about and I'm sure many of you are already advanced in your AI thinking process. So, and you might have even more sophisticated frameworks. But the way we think about it is you have to choose the right use cases that you believe are going to actually solve problems. Choose how you integrate it in a way that is great for the physician workflow. Think about the value adoption. I think Ben mentioned the wow moments. I think that is such an important point. Like, how do you create engagement? How do you make these initial people that resist to enthusiasts at the end? And then how do you govern that moving forward? How do you monitor for data drift and make sure you have transparency towards what's happening with the system? With that said, so I love that, we started with Jeff talking about why AI from a macro is really important. Then Ben gave us the details of how it's actually being done in practice, and hopefully this helps connect and why I think Memorial has been so thoughtful in the way they did this. I think they've took exactly the right steps into making sure they have a scalable approach from the get-go. And Ben, over to you for the future.
Okay, I'm going to jump back in, share my screen. So I can't actually predict the future, but I'm going to try to give you a glimpse of what I think is coming in AI and healthcare. I call this the crystal ball segment, and I was actually going to get changed in the middle of the while Elad was talking, but I wanted to hear what he had to say. So I'm just giving you this picture instead. Pretend this was me. So on the horizon, in the short term, 3 to 5 year horizon, what do I think is going to happen? First of all, I believe AI is going to be able to fully automate measurement of lesions in various parts of the anatomy, lung nodule, liver lesion, volumetric measurement, geometric measurement, comparison with prior measurements, being able to give you the exact Hounsfield units, how those have changed, has the density changed, has the size changed, what has treatment done in the interval, and then give you a comparison. That should be, I think, something that happens in the next 3 to 5 years. And in addition, I believe it will be able to automate standard classification. So the ACR has a number of classification schemes that are, for the most part, imaging based. And I believe, and then again, this may be closer to the 5-year frame, you will be able to get an AI tool that not only measures the size of the lesion, but is able to say what score or category it is on the BI-RADS or LI-RADS or PI-RADS classification scheme. In addition, I think we will have a lot more opportunistic CT screening. And if you haven't heard of this, it's actually very cool. When a radiologist looks at a study, often the patient's referred from the emergency department with abdominal pain, a CT is obtained, and they're looking for gallstones, and they're looking for pancreatitis, and they're looking for diverticulitis, and looking for appendicitis, and looking for a bowel obstruction. What they may not be looking for is a tremendous amount of information that exists on the CT that the computer can easily measure, but the human eye has a harder time with. For instance, the density of the bone structure, the calcium in the arterial structures, the ratio of fat in the omental structures compared to fat in the subcutaneous tissues, the density of the psoas muscle, of the paraspinous musculature, and finally, the fat volume in the liver. All of these can be combined to provide important information that have utility in wellness, prevention, risk profiling, and pre-symptomatic detection of relevant diseases. I think that this will happen in 3 to 5 year term. Finally, and also importantly, the use of natural language processing and imaging reports and within the EMR to be able to make sure that patients have been properly screened, that if the patient has an incidental finding on a study that was done 6 months ago, the AI will follow up to make sure that that finding has a follow-up study. So many applications to be able to combine various structured data inputs in the EMR with report information. I believe that AI will be able to do this. The important thing to do is to avoid analysis paralysis. Sometimes we can get into too much analysis and get data and end up with information that we don't actually know how to interpret, and it's just over the top. So a targeted approach to making sure that we know what we're looking for and measuring what we intend to measure is very important here. And then finally, in the 5 to 10 year frame, so I do believe that in the 5 to 10 year frame, we will see independent AI analysis of imaging studies. That is a future state. The current state is essentially single-purpose algorithms that are working independently from one another to diagnose individual findings. So for instance, let's just take chest X-ray. So you might be able to diagnose a pneumothorax. That's one algorithm. Might be able to diagnose a rib fracture. That's another algorithm. These don't exist yet, as far as I'm aware, but diagnosing a consolidation, diagnosing a lung nodule, all of these things are single-purpose algorithms, which are binary answers, yes or no. But there are probably 100 different things that the radiologist is looking for when they look at a chest X-ray that the AI vendors are not really focused on right now. And why not? Because they may not have any immediate clinical impact. And so things like, is there shift to the tracheal air column? Well, that may have clinical impact. Is there shift to the mediastinum? Is there soft tissue mineralization? What is the pattern of the consolidation? All of these things require vendors to develop individual algorithms that are going to work in parallel. And then once you have those algorithms all working in parallel, you have to develop a tool that is able to take all that information and combine it into a single diagnosis. So the problem is the vendors may not have an interest in looking at something like soft tissue calcification. That could have a differential diagnosis, which includes dermatomyositis, scleroderma, hyperparathyroidism, tumoral calcinosis, calcium pyrophosphate dihydrodeposition deposition disease, phlebolith. There's a million things that it could be, injection granuloma. So the vendor has to be able to focus on things that are not of immediate clinical impact to the patient, and then train the AI to incorporate all of it into a diagnosis. I do think it'll happen eventually, but not immediately. I do think it'll start with radiography, and I think it's likely to start with negative exams, such as a negative chest X-ray. But ultimately, I do think the radiologist will still be involved. And finally, radiomics. Radiomics is a very cool field. Essentially, on the left of this slide, you can see what radiologists are able to see. Is the lesion lobulated? What's the size of a lesion? Is it spiculated? What's the density of the lesion? But the computer, being more fine-tuned, is able to look at the texture of the lesion, what is the shape in reality, not just lobulated versus spiculated, but the exact type of shape. And then the computer is able to create a pattern, a map essentially of what that lesion looks like. What you're seeing here is on the bottom, a single individual patient who has a lesion, and this is the radiomic map of that lesion. And then what can happen is that map gets compared to the maps of lesions of millions of different patients that are out there in the public, and being able to determine, okay, this lesion looks like it's adenocarcinoma. This lesion looks like it's non-small cell carcinoma. And then that's the information the radiomics can get back to you. It'll also get back to you information about whether this lesion was likely to be responsive to certain types of chemo or radiation therapy. So radiomics, 5 to 10 year range. This is the Magic 8 Ball segment, because unlike the crystal ball segment, the nice thing about Magic 8 Ball is you get to potentially put the text in here. And I think that's what AI is offering us. Those of us who are adopting it early are going to be able to determine what the future looks like. And that's what I'm so excited about. This is the wave. And we have to make sure that we are not these folks at the bottom of the wave, but we're this guy at the top of the wave. And I think with proactive thinking and forethought, we will be that guy and not the people swallowed up by the wave. So just remember, it is the most adaptable species that is the one that survives. So we have to be nimble as we approach the future of AI. Thank you very much for your time and for inviting me to participate.
Thank you very much, Dr. Friedman, Jeff, and Elad. A lot of interesting things for the audience to start thinking about. Now is the time to start asking some questions in the Q&A. I thought, since we're having a crystal ball moment, I thought this was a good segue, Jeff and Elad, maybe to get your perspectives on where you think AI is going. I know there was some discussion about ambient AI, and I think the audience would benefit from hearing your perspective on that as well.
Elad, go ahead.
Well, I'll start, but I'm keen to hire you as well, Jeff. I will say, in my mind, one of the areas that are most exciting are building the intelligence layer for the health system. And when I say that, I mean that we have increasing complexity in the delivery of care. We have more and more specialization. We have more and more care gaps that are because of the transition in care points. I think Ben mentioned incidental findings, but effectively what we see, I'll give one example. So in the early days of ADOC, we developed a pulmonary embolism algorithm that can help prioritize pulmonary embolism patients. And what we've learned is that there is actually a bigger problem as you look at that care pathway. In recent years, there has been more and more interventional procedures, basically going in and instead of giving medication, doing an intervention, but that requires a multidisciplinary team to make that decision. So there is a lot of potential impact on patient care. The problem is that health systems that try to implement these, they called PER teams, had a lot of difficulty in the change management. What was happening in UH in Cleveland actually did a great study, irrespective of ADOC. They found out that despite him being a great academic center, training a PER team, training the ED, training everybody, 75% of patients that their workflow defined should be escalated to the PER team have not been escalated at all. Therefore, definitely didn't benefit from that. So again, the health system defined a new workflow for an acute disease, and despite them doing it and training it in a really terrific health system, have not been actually able to materialize that. And I think it's obvious it's because of the increasing complexity. In my mind, the big potential of AI is to be that router of information, right? Like we can actually, health systems can actually define their workflows in a thoughtful way and have AI be this tool that can take information from one department and put it in another and find here an incidental finding nobody expected and alert and trigger a care pathway. So I think AI is going to be more, and clinical AI is going to be more and more ingrained to how our health system operates, and would allow us to really massively transform how workflows work and how quality is defined. And that's one of the areas I'm really excited about, is how do you really build this enterprise-wide AI layer that can connect the dots of care across different departments.
Yeah, and I would agree everything you said. I mean, to just Marley, your point in question about some of the maybe voice generated AI and how we're seeing that leverage. We're already seeing great gains. There's a few vendors in the market, we all know them, so I won't name them, but there's great vendors in the market that are using the ability to use our voice, our conversation in a physician office or any other clinical area, document for that provider, have a more simplistic, a more complete, a more relevant conversation actually being documented in the electronic medical record through that conversational AI today than what they did over the last dozen years, where many times providers would go home at the end of the night and try to remember what they actually spoke to their patient about and start documenting. So how much of that information is lost? How much relevancy is there? We know that there's clinical gaps in that, and we know that the conversational AI is going to just get better. And I do think someone asked the question, are these algorithms, both in conversational and in not conversational, but all these different dimensions of AI, are they learning? And the answer is yeah. If AI is not learning, it's not AI. So that, at least that's my thinking here. And so absolutely, I know that's true with ADOC. I know that's true with a lot of the predictive models that we've put in place. And so I think that we have to see this again, as I said in the opening, we're at the infancy of this. We're going to learn so much. We're going to learn so much as AI continues to learn so much.
Well said.
Alex, do you want to address the topic of AI learning over time?
Well, I do think that the AI does learn over time, and I think that's a really important facet, right? That we want to make sure that it continues to improve. And again, I think big part of AI is really improving access to care, so you have to improve over time. The one caveat I will say is that due to regulation, we cannot. It's not like literally every minute that we update the algorithm, right? It has to be in bulks, right? Because it's a clinical device, we want to really validate. So we do it every period of time. And actually we invest a lot every year in kind of retraining and improving our algorithms. So it's a really good point. And honestly, it's one of the things that you could ask, well, like, why do you improve the algorithm? It's like, it's already been sold. Like, you're not going to get more money on a better algorithm. And that's true. It's actually, that said, in my belief, us as vendors, we have the kind of moral imperative to keep improving the algorithm, to keep reducing bias, to keep making sure that we have the best solutions out there. Because I do believe quality matters a lot. So totally agree on that point.
Thank you a lot. We have a question. Let's see. Can you comment on where we might be with payers and AI right now? Seems like adoption was driven by efficiency. Have you had any discussions with payers regarding any improved clinical incomes you have seen? How will payers recognize AI assistant services?
Well, I can take that maybe. So I think the question is on point. Today, most AI is not reimbursable by the payers. I do think it's gonna change, but it's gonna take time because payers are slow and require a lot of evidence. But in my mind, it's really necessary for us to solve that problem, because we as vendors, obviously we develop what people pay for. So right now we optimize, solutions for health systems typically that are good in a fee-for-service environment. And in my mind, I would much rather optimize on solutions that improve total cost of care for payers, right? So I think we need to crack it, but it's going to take a while.
Yeah, and Elad, you hit the nail on the head. I was going to say the same thing. Essentially, I was going to use the words value-based care, population health, at-risk arrangements. Payers are going to look at this in a new world, and they already are. So we have had some conversations with our payers. One of our payers, we're self-employed or self-insured, so that in itself is looking at our at-risk population of about 27,000 people that we insure at Memorial. And they're already saying the prediction that can come, the wellness and the opportunity to be more predictive is actually going to affect our contracts over time, which is a very positive thing for both patients, for employers, for payers, for providers, because that drives healthcare costs down if we can actually take advantage of these tools to make, again, healthcare a little bit easier and better. And I think the payers will recognize this over time. They're already looking at it and they're already talking. And it gets to some of the regulatory conversation too, because payers are very involved with the provider organizations around regulatory action and AI.
Thank you, Jeff. I have a question maybe for Dr. Friedman, more just about the workflow. Can you walk us through sort of, a day in the life of radiologists using artificial intelligence? What is it? How does the prioritization sort of happen in your workflow?
Thanks. So I'll just mention, I hear a lot of questions about return on investment, and obviously that's important and top of mind. While intangible, the benefits of improved productivity and efficiency for radiologists are tremendous. You're getting through more cases in a shorter period of time. You're expediting diagnosis. You're potentially decreasing length of stay. You're ensuring the accuracy of the diagnosis and the quality of the report. All of those may not be, have a payer reimbursement attached, but they are very impactful. With respect to the way ADOC in particular works, the studies coming off the modality are going immediately into a server. That server is analyzing the exam and sending back to the radiologist a thought process, either a potential positive or a potential negative. The radiologist, I saw one question, does the radiologist get the information or get to look at the images first? The radiologist gets the information pretty much at the same time that they're looking at the images, and has that information when they interpret the study. That information has to be obviously validated by the radiologist when they're going through their interpretation. I would say the accuracy level is outstanding. You can see the 26 wow moments that I mentioned. Those are times when the AI probably did better than the radiologist, or at least picked up something so sufficiently subtle that the radiologist was impressed with the tool. I cannot overemphasize how important it is as the work list gets longer, being able to prioritize that study that AI thinks might have an intracranial hemorrhage. So rather than reading it in the 10th of the order, you're reading it first and getting the information back to the emergency department so they can treat the patient.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Friedman. I think we've got time for just one more question. I'm just looking through the chat here. There's a question about overcoming data challenges. I know, Jeff, this is a topic you love to discuss. How did you overcome the data challenges with AI?
Well, I don't think we have. I think we are always going to have data challenges. And I think the data, again, is rooted in what AI really is foundationally. And so I'm not sure I completely understand the question, except that data drives our decision making and has been so important and evolved here. I can tell you only the experience here at Memorial, but it absolutely has evolved to be much more, I would say, recognize that we need to use data to make decisions and to provide care at a better level. And so data is at the root of what AI is. And I think it'll, again, be more informed. The AI will learn for the more data we get into the system. I don't know if Dr. Friedman or Elad have anything to add there.
Totally agree.
So we appreciate your passion and your partnership. You definitely left the participants with quite a bit to think about. We covered a lot of territory today. Thank you, all of you, for your time today and your perspectives. And everyone, I hope you have a lovely day.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.